The perfect time to get ahead of your league mates in Dynasty is right now. It's June. There's not a whole lot going on. We're about a month away from training camp. So me and Danny decided to take a good hard look at the 2025 running back class. And guess what? There's so many good ones that we literally can't even cover this in one video. So we're going to cover our running backs 1 through 8 consensus wise. And then tomorrow we'll cover kind of like 9 through 15 and anybody that just missed the cut. This is a loaded running back class. We'll give you guys a good idea of what they do well, their strengths, their weaknesses, their profiles, what we need to see from them this year, how they stack up in the FSC prospect model. It should be a ton of fun breaking down this video. So I'm fired up, especially after last year's class, a little bit subpar, not a whole lot to be excited about. This 2025 running back class is ludicrous.
Yeah, and we were talking literally off camera, and out of the guys we've watched so far, how many of them would be like top 75 level grades, top 50 level grades if they were to enter the NFL draft at this current point. It's pretty remarkable how stacked this running back class is, like you said, and kind of makes me a little bit bitter that some of these guys didn't declare for the draft last year, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're not going to waste any time. We're going to go from 8 to 1. No intro today. We got too many good running backs to talk about. So let's start with our consensus running back 8. Now with 8 and 7, we have a little bit of disagreement here. So I'll let you talk about your guy, Jordan James from Oregon. And then I'll talk about my guy, Damien Martinez, formerly of Oregon State, who now goes to Miami. I have your guy, Jordan James at 11. You have my guy, Damien Martinez at 11, but each of us has the other guy at 7. So I'll let you break down Jordan James's game here first.
Yeah, and the one thing you will contextualize from this class as we go through these 8 guys and as we go through the 9 through 15 as well is that it's a mix of what you like. There's power guys, there's speed guys, there's elusive guys, there's pure contact balance guys, there's some receiving backs mixed in, and then just straight up from a production standpoint, some guys that we're projecting to improve coming into the season and some guys that have shown sustained production. So for me, Jordan James is the guy I am putting my eggs in the basket for, completely blowing the scene of the college football landscape this upcoming year. Technically, he was the 1B in the backfield to Bucky Irving this past season over at Oregon, was graded as the most efficient back in college football, the highest PFF rushing grade at 94.8 in the NCAA, 4.04 yards after contact per attempt, 5th amongst the backs that I watched. And when you watch this guy, he absolutely pops on tape. Elusiveness is his absolute calling card. He's one of the best at just straight up making people miss in the phone booth. And what I loved about Jordan James is for a guy that basically burst onto the scene last year. Again, the first few games didn't really get a ton of carries, was working behind Noah Whittington on the Oregon Ducks roster. But once he got his opportunity, man, combining that power, combining that elusive ability, man, like I really think he is going to storm the scene a la a Kenneth Walker in the 2021 NCAA season where people really didn't know what he brought to the table. And then he goes that Michigan State year, has that phenomenal season, ends up getting drafted in the second round. I really do that. I really do see that being the path for a guy like Jordan James. Again, breakaway runner. When he has a crease, he is absolutely gone. And again, he was playing with an NFL running back last year. Bucky Irving, solid NFL prospect, gets selected in the NFL draft to your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I straight up thought Jordan James was the better overall running back on that team. The weaknesses of his profile, again, he's not a refined pass catcher yet. I think he can end up developing this part of his game with Bucky Irving not on the Oregon Ducks, but this is something that was definitely missing in his 2023 tape over in college. He is basically a 0 at this point in the pass blocking game. He didn't really log a ton of snaps. Again, he was okay when he did log the snaps, but again, he only logged 13 reps in pass block according to PFF. So there's definitely an incomplete assessment at this point. I really do feel like maybe the reason why you have him at 11 is because of that reason. There's more productive backs in this last college season, but for me, I see that he can become the next Kareem Hunt. I really do see contact balance, elusiveness. I think he has the opportunity to challenge Ollie Gordon's Doak Walker presence this year. Obviously, Doak Walker went to Ollie Gordon this past year. I think Jordan James in that Oregon offense can flat out win that trophy in 2024.
Yeah, Jordan James, I mean, the stuff that I wrote down about him, I think you kind of summed up. He's explosive. He's elusive. He's got home run speed. I think he's a decisive kind of one cut and go style runner. Think of like the way that the Dolphins use Devon Achane or Raheim Mostert, like that type of player. It's funny that you mentioned Kareem Hunt because that's actually his most comparable player in the prospect model, according to assuming he gets like, second, third round draft capital. Kareem Hunt is kind of the relative comparison as a prospect profile that we're talking about here. I think the thing that gives me hesitancy on Jordan James, you kind of alluded to it, is his career high 108 carries this year.
Yeah.
Again, we're evaluating sophomores right now. Like, this is a sophomore player. Usually we don't evaluate players until their junior season, senior seasons, whatever the case is. So yeah, he's going to need to carry a bigger workload this year for me to feel confident that he's a top 8 running back in this class, because there's just simply guys I have ahead of him who have already done that, who also have great traits, who also have good receiving ability, also have good speed, also can break tackles, also can make people miss. And Jordan James, while he did that on a limited workload, a limited sample size, it is much harder to do that down to down when you're the dude and you get 250 attempts on the season, only 108 carries and 15 targets or 15 receptions. He's going to be fresh most of the time, right? Like, Bucky Irving was the primary back there. And while I feel good about Jordan James, his ability to take a step forward, I need to see more from him. And I think we will. I didn't want to put these projections above the proven guys already.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely fair. Again, this is such a great running back class. Literally, we got 15, 20 names that we can talk about being legitimate top 4 round draftable guys in this class. But for me, the way I kind of weighted some of these guys is projecting what they can be as juniors as they declare for the NFL draft in the oncoming year. But as you said, the tiebreaker for you, of course, is the already proven workload that some of these guys, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of a guy with an already proven workload, let's talk about Damien Martinez, formerly of Oregon State, goes over to Miami, transfers in the transfer portal this year. I think there was a lot of things that I loved about Damien Martinez, to be honest. I think he is the type of running back that doesn't waste time, doesn't waste steps. He gets to where he needs to go as fast as he possibly can.
Tone setter.
Yeah, literally a tone setter, exactly the type of player that you want to see. A guy that is still going to be very young, a guy that has a lot of meat left on the bone to work as a receiver, because that's one of the main cons to his game. The ball carrier moves, like specifically how he uses stiff arm, how he uses spin move, how he uses juke moves, were really refined, man. I thought that was really impressive part of his game. I think he's a very decisive runner. He diagnoses the plays quickly. He's obviously a power back, but he has good wiggle, so it's not like he just has to go through you. He can also make you miss as well. Again, receiving work was mainly screen game stuff. He didn't really have a whole lot of stuff going on there. Pass protection didn't have a whole lot of reps in that area as well. But I think just the way that he's going to create chunk gains at the next level is something that I've seen work out a lot. Like the types of running back that like a David Montgomery or Ramondre Stevenson are, where you're not going to hit the home run very often, but you are going to consistently churn out 20, 30-yard gains. And I like you're
underrated
your eyebrows because he's got speed. Like, it's not like he can't do that. It's just the type of player he is. He's not looking to bounce it outside. He's not looking to hit the home run. He is looking to get what's there, and he can break off the long run. My comp for him, I'm curious what yours is. I put Chris Carson with speed is what I put down for him.
It's so funny you said that. My comp was Latavius Murray with wiggle.
Okay, so guys that have been back-end RB1s in their career in fantasy football, I really liked Damien Martinez, man. Same. I have him at 7, like I said. I think when I'm projecting a guy to get better in a certain area, and his area obviously is receiving production, it's so nice to see that he's already been so productive as a true freshman at Oregon State, goes out there, carries a big workload. Sophomore year improved across the board, yards per carry, receiving grade or rushing grade, all that kind of stuff, missed tackles forced. I like seeing that progression from a sophomore, knowing that in his junior season, if he gets even better, he's going to really have the type of profile that I like, which is complete start to finish progression from freshman to junior year.
Yeah, 100%. And for reference, we talked about, Jordan James is my 7, Damien Martinez is my 11. For what it's worth, the difference between my 7 and my 12 right now in terms of the grades I gave these guys, 78.5 versus 76.0. So like we're talking razor thin Martin. So to sum that up, basically what I'm trying to say is even though I have Damien Martinez at 11, I absolutely enjoyed watching this guy. Like you said, he is the epitome of an absolute tone setter. And the thing is, what I love about him so much is you'll typically see these power backs that just simply lack the movement ability. But Damien Martinez, this guy's probably going to be a mid 4.4 type of runner.
Yeah, absolutely. He's in terms of his best comparables, according to the model right now, again, keep in mind when I say best comparables according to the model, all these guys still have another year of college football left. So they could improve on some numbers. They could get better in certain areas. But if Damien Martinez were draft eligible right now, his best comparables, assuming he gets, top 50, top 75, top 100 draft capital, are guys Darius Geis and Darrell Henderson in terms of just the caliber of prospect we're talking about. And Darius Geis actually a pretty decent comparison play style wise for him. Unfortunately, had a bunch of off the field issues, but I do think that Damien Martinez has that type of game to him where early second round rookie picks next year, I could see this guy being kind of in that area, maybe even late first round if we get some good draft capital for him, because I didn't even mention how big the guy is. He's 6 foot, 232 pounds. So if he runs in the 4.4s, there's a good chance that an NFL team is going to say, yeah, I'll draft this guy with the 54th overall pick in the draft.
Yeah, and for reference, some of the notes I also had on him: sheds tacklers with ease and gets great pad level when he's initiating contact. Despite being such a big back, the way he's able to lower his shoulders, finish contact, man. Like when I say tone setter, I'm not just talking about, a big back that can just break tackles by his size. He legitimately initiates and finishes through the contact, which is what you want to see for these bigger backs when adapting to the next level. Great footwork for his size. I thought he was extremely nimble. Like you said, a very, very wide array of ball carrier moves, despite being a 232-pound dude. I think he's going to be your ideal gap scheme hammer. You're in a gap scheme in the NFL. You need him to run between the tackles. He has the true upside to be a workhorse in that regard. Like we were alluding to, the weaknesses I have with him: receiving game is completely underdeveloped at this point. I think he's basically a 0 in the receiving game. And despite having the ideal size and strength, I don't know what it is, man, but he just cannot pass block whatsoever. I don't know if it's technique. I don't know if it's him not trusting where he should be. I don't know what the case is, but you would think the guy with that much physicality in the rushing game would be a better blocker. We're talking about a guy that had a 21.0 PFF pass block grade. Definitely an area for improvement this year over in Miami. And the other thing, of course, is despite his size and physical ability, I'm curious why he had such modest goal line production. Like, he wasn't a touchdown scorer over at Oregon State. Maybe that changes this year in Miami, but would like to see 6 foot, 232 pounds, runs behind his pad level the way he does, a little bit more touchdown production.
Yeah, there's some positives to take away from his receiving profile. I mean, he averaged over like 10 yards per reception this year. He only had 11 catches, but he had 126 yards on those catches. Like you said, not good at diagnosing the blitz very well. I think that's going to be like just third down in general. If he can get better in that area, he's going to be a pretty exciting prospect, in my opinion, because I do think he's going to test well. I do think he's going to be yet again productive this year. And again, he's been a guy that's been improving, like 982 yards as a true freshman on the ground at 6.1 yards per carry in a Power 5 conference is impressive, right? And the fact that he improved upon those numbers as a sophomore is also very impressive. So those two guys kind of like, I guess, are guys towards the back end of our top 8. We're going to talk about more guys in the 9 to 15 range that also have some improvement to do. And a lot of them have to be the guy this year. Trevor Etienne and Jonah Coleman, some of the guys we'll talk about in the next video, more so like they've been efficient, but we need to see them be the guys. The next guy that we're going to talk about is one that was very highly sought after going into 2024. Rookie draft cycles. We were thinking we were going to get this guy with a top 5 rookie draft pick. People were tanking their picks for him. And that's Raheim, aka Rocket Sanders, of formerly Arkansas, now of South Carolina. It's funny that he goes to South Carolina because like his best career game was against South Carolina. Yeah. He is actually from that area, so that's why he went back home and played there. Man, he was such a fun sophomore. When I was watching him for summer scouting last year, I was so excited about him. I did actually have Trey Benson as my RB1 last year over Raheim Sanders, who many people had as their RB1. But his 2023 tape is unwatchable. Like, he was so banged up. He said in an interview he had a torn labrum and like a sprained ankle most of the year. So he couldn't cut with his ankle, and he also couldn't lower his shoulder because of his labrum. So you can't watch his 2023 tape. Just throw it in the garbage. We're not going to talk about it anymore. Watch his sophomore tape and hope he's healthy this year. That's pretty much all we have to say about Raheim Sanders.
I think you covered it perfectly. And the numbers will back that up, because if you actually go through his 2022 versus 2023 numbers, you're seeing a completely different running back. So for reference, what I'm referring to, 65.0 PFF grade in 2023. That was 87.4 in 2022. 2.45 yards after contact per attempt. Again, we're talking about a 6'2", 242 pound back. For reference, that was at 3.14 in 2022. And the biggest thing to note, 14 missed tackles forced on 62 carries versus 65 on 224 in 2022. Like you said, he was just a completely different running back this year. The injuries completely caught up to him. It looked like he couldn't move in 2023 versus, like you said, if you rock on the 2022 tape, his movement may be his best trait for his size. We got a rocked up 242 pound dude that, quite frankly, moves like a 215, 220 pound guy.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how much he weighs, really, because he's listed 242 in some places. He's listed 225 in some places. But regardless, I mean, if he runs in the 4.4s, which I think he will, at 230 plus even, he's going to be a weight-adjusted speed score darling, the type of guy that we're going to be comparing. Like his best comparable, according to his prospect profile right now, is Antonio Gibson, who's basically the same size and athleticism level that he is. Only Sanders, as a sophomore, had that like great year of production, and his numbers are being dragged down by the lack of production in 2023. Because if I did this exercise for him as a sophomore going into last year, the Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry territory of production profile. So with Raheim Sanders, just stay healthy, dude. Like you just need to stay healthy this year. And he, like you said, he looked slow, didn't look like he trusted anything about his shoulder. My comparison for him, it's one of my favorite comparisons that I have so far. Give me a jetpack Najee Harris. That's exactly, because I
thought about that.
I think he's a good receiver too. It's not that he's just a linear downhill thumper for a 6'1", 235 plus pound back. I think he's also very elusive. I think he's great in the open field. He's a weird prospect because we don't usually see guys this big and this fast who are as mobile and as elusive as he is laterally. And that really played itself out in the receiving game. You just simply can't teach a lot of the things that he has. So if he could stay healthy and he could produce big numbers at South Carolina, he's going to be a guy that we remember really quickly why we were hyping him up heading into 2024 rookie drafts.
It's so funny you said jetpack Najee Harris, because I actually considered making that comp. You know, I definitely considered it, but all jokes aside, my comp was modernized Brandon Jacobs. The Brandon Jacobs we knew in the late 2000s, this downhill hammer where at the time, you know, teams weren't throwing as much to their running backs unless your name was LaDainian Tomlinson. Realistically, the role of the big power back on a team back then was to work between the tackles. If you were to take Brandon Jacobs and kind of make him adapt to today's game where running backs are getting more use in the out of the backfield, he has to win a little bit more with agility rather than just straight power like Brandon Jacobs back in the day. This is what I think Brandon Jacobs would look like. So it's funny, both huge backs. I think Brandon Jacobs might have actually even been 260, which is absurd to even think that that was a running back in the NFL, especially with how good he moved. But I see that with Raheim Sanders. He is an oversized running back that moves like just a normal big running back. And when you look at his some of the things I had listed on his tape, 2022, like I said, showed a lot more promise as a tackle breaker in that season. Sophomore production would have had him as a top projected back for the 2024 draft. And like I said here, throwback runner. He reminds me back when I started watching football and I'm watching these downhill guys. Raheim Sanders really pops the pads on the film. Some of the weaknesses I have here, despite being solid for his size, he's not going to win consistently with his agility. But again, when you're 242, you don't have to.
I disagree, dude. I thought he won with his agility more. Like, that's why he reminds me of Najee Harris, is because sometimes Najee Harris forgets that he's like 230 pounds. Raheim Sanders is a lot more like Leonard Fournette, Najee Harris, where it's like, dude, just run over something.
Fournette's
like,
a good one, too.
He had more of an issue running people over than he did making people miss. Yeah.
I saw a power runner. I thought Leonard Fournette actually, like you mentioned it, is actually another good comp in my opinion. The other one I have here struggles with with vision and patience behind the line of scrimmage at times. Again, young running back in that sophomore film. Maybe he comes out this year, really improves on the cerebral aspect of playing the running back position. Like we were talking about, pass blocking is an issue that he's going to have to clean up. Despite his size, thought he lacked a little bit of technique. But again, we're going back to sophomore film. Like the little nuances, the little cerebral things of playing the running back position, we're assuming hopping into his senior season that those are going to be fixed up once he's fully healthy.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, Raheim Sanders, a guy that I'm just going to put it back to the point that I made earlier. You can't teach a lot of the things that Raheim Sanders has.
Yeah.
So if he does put it all together, stay healthy, have another productive season, the NFL is going to like him. He's going to test really well at the combine, and he'll probably get good draft capital as a result of that. And, you know, some of the comparisons that pop for him here are like guys like AJ Dillon, Antonio Gibson, David Montgomery, Josh Jacobs, Rashad White, Royce Freeman, guys like that. Guys who were, again, kind of more like bangers. Early second round, kind of late first round type of rookie picks. But if Raheim Sanders does have a monster season this year, he'll probably skyrocket all the way back up to the Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry kind of territory of a prospect that he would have been had he not gotten injured this year and just came out as a junior from Arkansas. So another guy that we probably would have wished was in the 2024 class because he would have made it a lot better. Treyevon Henderson, running back from Ohio State. The first thing I wrote down for Treyevon Henderson, best feet in the class. He has the best feet in the class. He is make you miss in a phone booth. I want to watch him run the bag drill at the combine because my comp for him for this exact reason is Cam Akers, because Cam Akers ran the bag drill like nobody I've ever seen.
Guess who my comp is for him? Not Cam
JK,
Akers.
is it J.K. Dobbins? Because that's lazy.
No. Same class.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
DeAndre Swift.
Okay, yeah. So we're talking just all 2020 running backs is Treyevon Henderson. He's so bursty, man. He's twitched up. He's got great speed. He is a home run hitter. That's exactly the type of running back he is. When you go back to his freshman season, for those of you guys that don't follow college football, we had a 5'10", 212, 215-pound running back come into the Ohio State Buckeyes, a team that had CJ Stroud and JSN and Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, started as a freshman and had a monster season. And mainly why he had a monster season was because he was healthy, and that's been a bit of an issue for him the last 2 years. And he was able to break off those long plays, able to catch some passes out of the backfield. I think the biggest problem I had with Treyevon Henderson on film, this guy got smoked a lot, man. He got hit hard a lot. He was not like Damien Martinez in the sense that he's doling out punishment. No, he was getting hit a lot, and he was taking punishment. So he also got disrupted by contact a lot more than some of the other backs ahead of him and behind him too. So with Henderson, I feel good about his receiving skill set. I feel good about his athleticism. I feel good about his ability to make people miss. I think he has good vision and all that kind of stuff. But when the NFL linebackers are trying to take you down, I worry about him a little bit.
I will say I was a little bit disappointed with his elusiveness compared to what I expected coming into the film. Again, 29 missed tackles forced on 156 carries this year. And even when you go back to his 2021 film, which I would argue his 2021 was his best film. And again, you can make the case, injuries piled up. Maybe he's fully healthy now with Quinshon Judkins there, which hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, we'll talk about in a little bit later on this video. But yeah, I thought he would be making people miss a little bit more than I expected.
I will say, missed tackles forced has lied to us with speed backs before, because Devon Achan's numbers weren't good either. And when you watch Treyevon Henderson, you can tell that he has the he earns every single missed tackle he gets, if that makes any sense. And then he just runs away people most of the other times.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely fair, because obviously if you have that breakaway speed, you're just simply going to get into less encounters than players that don't have that God-given speed. But that was one of the issues, is even some of the times contextualizing that, would have liked to see him make people miss a little bit better. The other ones, of course, injuries have mounted up in these last couple of years. Can he hold up to a full workload at the NFL level? That's where my weaknesses stop, because like you were saying with some of his strengths, game-breaking explosiveness and speed at his compact size. Again, this is a 5'10", 208-pound running back that, quite frankly, moves like a 190-pound running back for the most part. Like, I fully expect him to crack the 4.3s, assuming he is healthy at the NFL Combine. Fantastic receiver out of the backfield, slips contact well. I thought he honestly, you said he had worse contact balance. I thought he slipped contact better than he just flat out made people miss.
It's not that he had bad contact balance. I think that the way that some running backs play, and Alvin Kamara is the king of this, you never get an even hit on them. And I think Henderson squared up to defenders so much that he got leveled a lot. And it's not like the way that Damien Martinez, and when we talk about Omarion Hampton, he does this really well too. When you square up these backs, it's hard to get like your shoulder into their chest plate to take him down. Henderson wasn't very good at that. It's like if you got your hands on him, you probably were able to wrap up, because he wasn't like kind of eluding and slipping you on their tackle attempts. And maybe that's an elusiveness problem more than it is a contact balance problem. But regardless, he needs to get more creative in general.
See, that's another thing. I thought once he hit the second level, being able to diagnose lanes, being able to get in spots where he can use that God-given speed, I thought he was a creative runner in the second level. Maybe when you're saying behind the line of scrimmage, you want to see more creativity to avoid tackles, I would agree with that. But specifically, once he got past the line of scrimmage, I thought he was a very creative runner. And when he was in create mode, I thought he had very, very good balance.
Yeah, no, he does a lot of things well. And I think most of the stuff he does when he's playing at his best and he's healthy are not going to matter at the NFL level. It's a stylistic stuff, because he's fast. He knows he can get away with certain things and all that kind of stuff. But to be lazy here, his best comparable in the model is J.K. Dobbins, who obviously went to Ohio State as well. J.K. Dobbins also notoriously had a middle season in his prospect profile. He had a great freshman season, down sophomore year, and then his junior year rushed for like 2,000 yards. Probably not going to happen with Treyevon Henderson, but at the same time, I still feel pretty good about Treyevon Henderson being efficient on however many touches he gets. If he gets 200 carries this year, I still think he's going to be at his best as a senior this season.
And I will say the reason why I also agree the J.K. Dobbins comp was lazy is that I thought J.K. Dobbins was a more cerebral runner than Treyevon Henderson was. Like you said, a little bit of vision lapses that I found, a little bit of patience lapses that I found in his tape. I ended up docking him a little bit there. But the other thing is that Treyevon Henderson is a phenomenal receiving running back. And that was the biggest con for J.K. Dobbins coming out. And I'll talk about the numbers in a second, but just specifically as a receiver, thought he was very, very versatile, thought he was very, very good after the catch. And the other thing, why he will play on third down right away, he is a fantastic pass blocker, man. Every single time he had to square up and protect, whether it was the 2021 film, even when he was injured in 2022, even this year in 2023, I watched the Notre Dame game. When he was tasked with picking up a blitzer through the middle gaps, he was always picking up that blitzer. And like I said, the numbers would back that up. 73.6 PFF receiving grade in 2023, 70.3 pass block grade. So this is a guy that, assuming he's fully healthy, has the full 3-down skill set we are craving in fantasy. And that's why he ranked as my RB6.
Yeah, he was my RB5 because he also hits, like you mentioned, how he looks as a receiver. He also, despite missing time and all the stuff that we have to factor into his profile, he still hits the marks for like receiving yards, market share, over expected by experience level and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, Henderson is a guy that if he has a great season this year, he's probably going to be a top 50 pick in the NFL draft. And to be honest, he probably would have been last year had he come out. If he had come out, he probably goes right around where Brooks went, if not ahead of Brooks. I think the NFL would have been quite excited to draft him. And I've heard some off the field stuff with him that, he's, fights through adversity and that kind of stuff. And it's another box that you can check on Treyevon Henderson. Yeah.
Like, basically, I know when he was growing up, he had some home issues, and that's just fueled his fire. And again, fighting through injuries. That's why his 2022 wasn't too great, because goddamn, that guy's whole body was completely massacred, but that guy just wanted to get onto the field. Didn't matter if his ankle was bothering him, if his shoulder was bothering him. Again, I don't know the specific injuries.
I think it was ankle and calf or something like that.
I know his lower body. Season. Was it this year or last year he was also fighting an upper body injury? Because
I think it was this year that he had the upper body injury.
What it was.
I think in 2022 is mostly like soft tissue stuff.
Yeah, which makes sense regardless, though. Like, you could have made the argument that maybe he should have taken 2022 off once he was dealing with all those injuries. But the fact that he even tried to return the field just speaks volumes to his character, like you were saying.
Yeah. So we don't know. We don't know who has who where, because these top 4 guys, let me tell you, are studs.
Unbelievable.
They are all easily would have been RB1 in this class. And all of them have a shot to go in the first round of the NFL draft next year. I would say they're probably ish type of players because that's how the NFL values running back. But who do you have at 4? Maybe it's the same guy I have. We'll see who it is.
It's funny that we just talked about Treyevon Henderson because I have his teammate at 4. Do you have him at 4?
I am at 3. So who do you have at 3 then?
I have at 3 Mr. Ollie Gordon.
Okay, so we are not going to talk about my 4 because you must have him at 2. So let's talk about Quinshon Judkins then. Since we're talking about Ohio State already, Quinshon Judkins has been the consensus RB1 in this class for years because, he came out, had a monster freshman season at Ole Miss and, rushed as the SEC Freshman of the Year or whatever the award he won was. Quinshon Judkins is such an Ezekiel Elliott clone. It's insane. When I watch him, all I see is Zeke, and now we're going to get to see him play for Ohio State. He's sturdy, strong legs, leg drive like nobody's business, man. He'll stop at a 5 year, like you tackle him after 5 yards. He's driving you 15 with his legs, the way that he keeps those things churning. I thought he had great power. I think he gets to top speed really fast too. I think his acceleration, he might only run like say 4.45 or something like that. But his 10-yard split, I'm willing to bet, will be one of the best in next year's class because his 0 to 10 is so strong. Once he, works through contact and he has to get to the second level, it feels like a freight train on wheels, man. Like it is really, really hard to get him on the ground. And I think he doesn't miss reads either. I think when he finds a hole, he's very decisive. He gets to it. The thing that I come back to with Quinshon Judkins, and I have him a little bit higher than you. I have him at 3. You have him at 4. I'm sure you're going to say that he's not quite the most instinctive, fluid, open field receiver that you could see for a RB1 of this class. And we'll talk about one guy who absolutely is, who is our RB1 in this class, who's an open field receiver. I think Judkins needs a little bit of work in the receiving game. And I'm not sure he's going to get it because he's going to be splitting the field with Henderson this year. It would have made a lot more sense probably to have Henderson be at Ohio State by himself and Judkins stay at Ole Miss. But that's the situation we're going to be faced with. We're going to have to scout both of these guys individually on a per touch basis and not exactly for the production that they put up.
Yeah, no, 100%. The things I have listed down for Quinshon Judkins, elite workhorse size, like you said, 6 foot, 219 pounds, plays every single bit to that size. Absolute freak of nature. He's, the way I describe it is, some running backs kind of have like that psychotic nature where they are just absolutely going to obliterate through contact. And that epitomizes Quinshon Judkins. You need that dog mentality. Like when you watch, even when we're talking about current washed up Ezekiel Elliott, what he still does so well, even though he doesn't have the legs of 21-year-old Ezekiel Elliott, is finishing through contact. And like you said, if you were to just take Ezekiel Elliott, again, I don't think he's quite as good of a prospect as Ezekiel Elliott was. Again, a top 5 overall NFL draft pick. I think, like you said, Quinshon Judkins, more of a late first, early second type of guy. But with Quinshon Judkins, runs behind his pass, finishes runs, explosive downhill runner. And despite the offensive line being a big issue for Ole Miss this past year, 75% of his total rush yards were created himself.
Yeah, it's also pretty crazy to think that he came out as a true freshman in the SEC, rushed for 1,567 yards at 5.7 yards per carry, scored 16 touchdowns in a backfield that had Zach Evans, who was an NFL draft prospect that people really loved coming into the year. Dude, he had 91 first downs on 275 touches as a 18-year-old in the SEC.
31 rushing touchdowns in 2 years in the SEC. Keep in mind, true freshman, true sophomore, 31 rushing touchdowns. Like I said earlier, I kind of wanted Damien Martinez to have more rushing production based off his size at the goal line. Not an issue whatsoever for Quinshon. And in fact, I can see an NFL team even pushing up the board 20 plus picks compared to where he maybe even could be, just simply off of his scoring ability. You look at around the NFL needs guys, once you're inside the 5, once you're inside the 10, once you're inside the 20, that you can just put the ball into their gut and watch them score touchdowns.
Yeah, and again, the reason he's not 1 or 2 for either of us, I'm guessing, is the fact that he averaged 7.5 yards per reception, 0.64 yards per route run. He's
not a good pass blocker either.
Best receiver in the world. I think he has the upside to do it, kind of what Zeke did, because Zeke wasn't like an elite receiver coming out of college either. But if he's in an offense that's a pass-heavy team that has maybe an immobile quarterback, I could see him catching a lot of passes. It's just not something that I think you need to do with him. I think that if he goes into the NFL and he has 300 carries and 60 targets at most, that's probably fine. That's how you want to use him. But he has workhorse upside. Like, I think we're talking about a running back that legitimately has multi-time RB1 written all over him.
Well, you mentioned Zeke. My comp was Joe Mixon. And again, given the new RB landscape, like, we saw a couple years ago Jahmyr Gibbs. We saw a couple years ago Bijan Robinson go inside the top 12. But given the strength of this class, I would more so bet Quinshon being a late first, early second round pick. And Joe Mixon would have had a late first round draft capital had he not had the off-field issues. I mean, he still got selected, I believe, in the top 50 picks, despite literally having legal issues coming into the draft. So with Joe Mixon, like Quinshon Judkins, some of these guys, man, like, I know it's just such a blanket statement, but you can't teach the dog factor from a running back. The factor of it is a 3rd and 4, I need a first down. The hole is absolutely not there. In fact, I'm getting fucking wrapped up on my ankles 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. But can you still get the first down? And Quinshon Judkins was the guy getting the first downs.
Yeah, that's just what Judkins brings to the table. In terms of his comps right now, he's sandwiched in between Nick Chubb and Javonte Williams ahead of him and Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry below him. So we're talking about all guys that have been superstar running backs in fantasy. Again, the reason we're running these guys through the model is to give you an idea of just how good of prospects they are. And again, keep in mind, we're talking about a sophomore here who is stacked up against juniors and sometimes seniors in the prospect model here. So Quinshon Judkins is such a stud. And we'll talk about Omarion Hampton next, because I actually have him at 4. So he's a little bit lower for me. I wanted to put him higher. Believe me, I really wanted to put him at 2 because I think he had the second best tape of the guys that I watched. But Omarion Hampton, the thing that held me back of putting him above Judkins and Ollie Gordon is the instinctive, natural part of playing running back, because he has strong balance, man. Like I said, you can't square this guy up. It is really hard to get him on the ground unless you're wrapped around his legs, holding on for dear life, because if you square him chest to chest, he's running you over. Height, weight, speed, 6 foot, 220. I know this seems blasphemous, but that 28 on the back of his jersey reminded me so much of Jonathan Taylor, man. It was crazy how much he reminded me of JT.
Similar to JT. Guess who my comp was for him?
Nick Chubb?
Nick fucking Chubb. Nick Chubb. And that's why he's my RB2 in the class, because quite frankly, as good as some of these comps have been, I think Nick Chubb, other than maybe prime Alvin Kamara, which we'll get it to in a second, is a Hall of Fame level projection. And I see no reason, if Omarion Hampton lives up to his upside, why he can't be donning the Canton jacket at the end of his career. Because quite frankly, the biggest weaknesses I had from him is he's a very easy structured runner, but like you said, he isn't the most creative, isn't the most instinctual player. When he's just like, he knows where he needs to go, he gets downhill and he puts a pad to someone, he's fucking perfect. But like you said, once he has to kind of instinctually find some holes, get a little patient, dance behind the line of scrimmage, kind of open shit up, like we'll get to in a second with Ashton Jeanty, didn't really have that part to his game. I also have here, he's a good but not great receiver. So again, that seems like, oh, well, that's not really a weakness. He's still a good receiver. But according to a couple of these guys that we'll get into in a second, they are better receivers than Omarion Hampton. And that's the comp we're dealing with here. We're dealing these top 4 comps to each other because, quite frankly, like you said, they would be RB1 in 80+% of other draft cycles. So kind of goes to show you the top of this class. And the other thing I have listed here is he needed to improve as a pass blocker at times. Again, same thing like we were mentioning earlier, where some of these guys have the size, the power, but because they're young running backs, maybe a tick slow to diagnose blitzers. That's another thing I want to see from Omarion Hampton this year. The pros, I mean, there's a ton of them. Workhorse size, elite contact balance, one of the most elusive backs in this class, despite being 5'11", 220 pounds, one of the pound for pound strongest players in college football. That guy is a fucking horse. Violent runner between the tackles with great top end speed, and he's super nimble for being a near 220-pound running back. Like I said, I'm not throwing out Nick Chubb comps lightly, man.
Yeah, the balance, the instincts, the receiving work, they were all strong. Like you said, he actually was quite productive as a receiver. He had 29 catches for 222 yards, never dropped a pass in his college career as well. So he's got strong enough hands. It's just the way that he was used was more so the way that you use a Nick Chubb or a Jonathan Taylor, which is like get them on receiving targets that are screens and get them into open space. They're not going to like be running, Texas routes against, corners and winning. Like it's probably not going to happen at that point. But the thing that I put down as a negative for Omarion Hampton is, number one, how does he produce this year without Drake May? Because he went to the University of North Carolina, which I don't even remember if we mentioned what school he goes to. But I also, thinking back on, Drake May had no help this year. I mean, we had a stud in the backfield, which we're maybe discounting how good Omarion Hampton was for how Drake May played this year. But I also saw the odd like false read for Omarion Hampton, but he's a really young player. Man, he's like born in like 2004. He doesn't have a lot of experience playing running back yet, but he still rushed 254 times for 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns this year, and has the upside maybe to have a little bit less efficiency because he doesn't have Drake May as his quarterback anymore. But I would love to see him still build upon those numbers in some form or fashion. Maybe get more volume, maybe get more receiving work, maybe get more efficient as a receiver. Yeah, Hampton's a great player, man. I think he has a chance to go really high in the NFL draft because we are definitely talking about a guy that is going to be a 9.8 RAS type of athlete.
Future Dallas Cowboys running back?
Yeah, he would make a lot of sense in Dallas too. I think the type of running back that he is the type of running back that you feed 20 to 25 times a game.
Yeah, no, completely agree. But we went through my 2, and I believe we only have 2 guys left. We'll go through your 2.
Yeah, Ollie Gordon is the guy that settled in at 2
3.
for me. I think the tiebreaker between Gordon and these other guys is that I feel the safest about projecting him like if we had to draft these guys now, I think I project Gordon the best on all 3 downs because I think Judkins and Omarion Hampton have less receiving acumen than Ollie Gordon does. But also too with Gordon, I think I wanted, it's weird because he's wearing number 0. So I keep getting drawn to Braylon Allen, even though they don't play the same at all. But Braylon Allen as number 0 is like, this is everything we wanted a young number 0 running back to be with Ollie Gordon. I look at him. He's a big back, man. He's north and south. The way that he plays, he has unbelievable jump cuts.
No nonsense to his game, man.
Absolutely none. He has great speed. I don't think it's elite. I don't think he's running the 4.3s, but I think he's going to be a mid 4.4s guy, just like, running backs that we've mentioned already, Zeke and Bijan and those type of dudes. You only need 4.4 speed at the running back position reasonably. I think he's a little bit leanly built. He's kind of tall. He's like 6'1", like 215
Melvin Gordon.
Probably. The way he runs, I know they're not the same size, but he kind of runs like Derrick Henry. Like he kind of looks like Derrick Henry when he's running. He's kind of like upright and like tucked in. Like, you know what I mean? How Derrick Henry runs the ball. That's kind of what Ollie Gordon looks like. Only the receiving production is outstanding. And speaking on Hampton too, like Hampton lends himself into kind of like the Rashad Penny, Zach Charbonnet range of prospect as it currently stands, because he has more things to work on. But Ollie Gordon is sandwiched in between Dalvin Cook, Najee Harris, and Jahmyr Gibbs. So again, if he had come out already, we're talking about a guy who was a workhorse running back, Doak Walker Award winner this year, led college football in rushing, outstanding receiving market share numbers. There's not really any weaknesses to his game. That's why I have him at 2.
Yeah, I mean, he's my 3, like you said. Talk about just professional running backs. My comps, Melvin Gordon, DeMarco Murray. Again, DeMarco Murray, literally a rushing champion in the NFL. Melvin Gordon, of course, a fantasy top 5 running back for a few years there with the Chargers, man. The strengths that I have listed for him, like I said, I keep saying professional running back, but that is just such the epitome of Ollie Gordon's game. He understands blocking scheme. He understands defender blocker leverage. He always seems to pick the right gap. I have him listed here as a 7.5 out of 7.5 in his instincts, vision, and patience, because quite frankly, he just knows how to play running back, which is, to me, for a guy of his experience, so unique, because you typically see the older running backs, as they get more carries under their belt, develop that part of their game. But for a guy like Ollie Gordon, who, again, early portion of the year wasn't getting a ton of work, really bursted onto the scene in the middle portion, he just plays the running back position that it needs to be played. Has the natural build, like you said, to develop into a 3-down back, absorbs and finishes through contact with ease, and he is an elite goal line back. Like I mentioned with a couple of these guys in the top 4, when teams are inside the 5, inside the 10, inside the 20, and need a hammer running back to give the ball to and score them touchdowns, I mean, Ollie Gordon was just as good at it as anybody in this class. On top of that, I mean, he is your prototypical between the tackle slasher with 3-down upside. So I have him listed here as a fringe top 50 grade. Keep in mind, when I'm saying fringe, I'm more so meaning he's close to getting a top 25 grade. So for reference, Omarion Hampton, 85.5, top 25 grade. Just behind him, I have Ollie Gordon, 84.5. Just behind him, Quinshon Judkins, 83.5.
Yeah, these guys are all studs. I mean, Ollie Gordon had 50 targets last year. Like, that doesn't happen when you're the rushing champion in the NCAA. You don't usually see guys who have 285 carries for 1,700 yards and 21 touchdowns also add 50 targets in the passing game at 6'1". He's listed 6'2", 215. I think he's probably like 6'1", 210, which is a little bit of a weird build. To some degree, I'm hoping he can kind of like maybe bulk up. If he's 6'1", 220, I think that would be a perfect size for him. I just don't want him to like lose any speed, because he's obviously like a 4.4 guy.
Yeah, no, 100%. Again, he's the type of running back where as long as even if he ran 4.51, Melvin Gordon wasn't the fastest running back. And guess what? That guy was a multi-time RB1.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook was another name I wrote down as like, kind of reminds me of Dalvin Cook a little bit. Like I said, he looks like Derrick Henry when he's running, just like smaller. But he kind of profiles as like Dalvin Cook in terms of how he looks as a prospect and kind of his size profile. And I think the type of athlete he'll be and that kind of thing. And again, we're talking multi-time RB1 written all over him. So speaking of multi-time RB1 written all over him, I think the guy that we have compared this guy to is been an RB1 7 times, I believe. Ashton Jeanty, running back from Boise State, is unanimous RB1 for us, because this guy is a freak show, man.
Unbelievable.
Absolute freak show. 94.6 rushing grade, 5'9", 215 pounds, 1,344 rushing yards at 6.2 yards per carry, 48 targets, caught 44 of them for 578 yards, 3.19 yards per route run. And his receiving grade is over 90. And to give you guys an idea just how rare that is for a running back, Christian McCaffrey, Jahmyr Gibbs, end of list. Only running backs to ever post a 90-plus receiving grade. And we're talking about 2 of the best receiving backs in the NFL right now. So with Ashton Jeanty, you have essentially Jahmyr Gibbs with 20 pounds of muscle.
Yeah, and a better between the tackles runner. 5th highest yards after contact per attempt in the NCAA this past year. 82 missed tackles forced on 217 carries. 37 10-plus yard runs, which ranked top 20 in the NCAA. You just mentioned his receiving ability, 183.6 elusiveness rating, first amongst all the backs I watched in this class. There's nothing he doesn't do well. If you want to go through the grades that I gave him on the scale, 15 out of 15 contact balance, 15 out of 15 elusiveness, 15 out of 15 receiving ability, 9 out of 10 workload / size, 9 out of 10 athleticism, 7 out of 7.5 production profile, and that is simply because I docked him a little bit because of Boise State versus Power 4 conferences. Pass blocking, that was like the weakness because he only got a 4, but what running back in this class have I said is blocked well as a sophomore running back? That's typically a skill you see as they dominate as rushers. Once they go into their junior season, that's when they become more adept as pass blockers. I'm not worried about that. 6 out of 7.5 in terms of the patience / vision. Toughness, 6 out of 7.5. Elite trait bonus, again, given the fact he's one of the best receiving backs we've ever seen, given the fact he's one of the best elusive contact balance running backs we've ever seen come out, 5 out of 5. He graded 91 overall. Keep in mind, I mentioned my RB2, Omarion Hampton, was an 85.5. RB1, Ashton Jeanty, 91 with a top 10 overall grade. We're not only talking about the best running back in a stacked class, we're talking about a Bijan Robinson level prospect, and you can just talk about the prospect model because that'll point to it.
Yeah, I mean, dude, the reception market share over expected number for Ashton Jeanty, like I said, when I go through the way that the prospect model is outlined right now, as it currently stands, the only areas that he lost points for are level of competition. The only areas. That's literally like he was across the board at least where he needed to be. Sorry, you mentioned pass blocking as well. He was slightly below average in his pass blocking grade.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Like he's going to run in the 4.4s, low 4.4s, potentially in the 4.3s like Jahmyr Gibbs
I think 4.3s.
He could. I think he's probably like a 4.42 guy. That's what NFL Draft Buzz has him pegged at. I think that's probably about accurate. Very much adequate speed. 5'9", 215 pounds, adequate size. He has arrogant hands. There's like 3 or 4 catches on his tape that running backs just have no business making those catches. Like there's games that he like full out won straight for Boise State. Like he was the only reason they won the game.
Yeah, 100%. We'll get into, I believe we both have the same shared comp. We'll get to that in a second. But strengths I have written down, well built at 5'9", 215 pounds. Like if I were to pick a running back size, maybe you wanted, 5'10", 220, but 5'9", 215, about as good as it gets. Elite pass catcher, both as a schemed receiver and in isolation. When they wanted to split him out, when they wanted to run Texas routes, when they wanted to just give him the ball in space, he was able to do it all. Hence, like you said, that 91.6 PFF receiving grade. Easy acceleration once his foot hits the ground. When his foot gets planted and he gets vertical, good luck catching him, like you said. 4.42 as a modest projection for his 40, but I do think he cracks the high 4.3s, to be quite frank. Elite contact balance, one of the best tackle breakers recorded on PFF. Has the explosiveness to create big plays, balanced with the size and the ability to grind between the tackles. Like you said, Jahmyr Gibbs, probably a comp for him in the sense of the elite explosive ability. And like you said, he has that type of ability to create the big plays. But he also has the ability. You need a 3rd and 4. You need a 4th and 1. He needs to grind between the tackles, put his head down. He was converting those type of situations. 3-down workhorse upside. Again, the only weaknesses I have, Boise State with brackets level of competition. Not the most physical blocker. Vision lapses at times in rare occasions. Again, consistent for the most part, but at times I notice his vision would lapse. And the final thing that I have listed here, which you could even debate if this is a con, trust his talent a bit too much at times.
Yeah, no, like when you put him into the model, if you remove the draft capital element as an input from the model, because we don't know where he's going to get drafted yet, but I would venture a guess to say he goes in the 1st round of the NFL draft. If you remove the draft capital element, we're talking strictly prospect profile, removing the input of what the NFL thinks of these players. Only Bijan Robinson and Saquon Barkley have been listed as better, ahead of Christian McCaffrey on the prospect model. He is ahead of Christian McCaffrey. Leonard Fournette, Jonathan Taylor, Ezekiel Elliott, Joe Mixon, Breece Hall, Travis Etienne. He's ahead of all of these guys. And again, if he gets 1st round draft capital, which I believe he will, and tests at a high level, which I believe he will, he's jetpack Alvin Kamara, dude. He's Alvin Kamara with speed.
Comp. That's my same comp, man. Jetpack Alvin Kamara may just be
It's
the best
Jahmyr
running
Gibbs
back
with
of all time.
size or Alvin Kamara with speed. That's the two comps.
Oh, fuck. I mean, at this point, we may as well just throw the name Barry Sanders out there because fuck.
No, he's crazy, man. He is
Insane.
a crazy prospect. And my early 101 in rookie draft, I would take this guy over Luther Burden, over Tet McMillan, over whatever quarterback one you think is in this class, because we simply just don't get running backs like this very often. So yeah, I would take this guy 101 in 2025 rookie class. If I had to draft right now and you told me he went in the first round or even in the top 50, I would still take him 101.
If you guys are in Devy drafts right now, pick him up before he is labeled as the 101 is my best answer. And to be honest, I mean, I do have the 103 in our Devy draft. You have the 104. I have to think really hard now after watching that Jeanty tape.
Yeah, I really hope you don't do that. Just do your thing and take Jeremiah Smith or whatever. But yeah, Jeanty's he's a stud, man. He's an absolute stud. So we went through our top 8 running backs in this video. Again, we went in depth on these guys, but this is a first look. It's 2025 prospects that we're looking ahead to. If you're wondering, oh, how good are 2025 draft picks? I mean, well, it depends what you need. If you need a running back, it's quite good. If you need a quarterback, it's probably not that good.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and if you're NFL teams that need running backs, again, we talked about some of the running backs falling in the 2024 draft. I think teams had a pretty clear look at what this 2025 class would look like, because whether you need power, whether you need speed, whether you need receiving ability, whether you need goal line ability, this class is just absolutely stacked to the rim.
Yeah, we're going to go through running backs 9 to 15. And like, spoiler alert, they're all like second and third round caliber backs that probably would have been top 3 backs in this year's class. So yeah, this is a really deep class. It's really top heavy. It's got everything that you could possibly ask for. So let us know down below who you're most excited to see in the next video, who you're excited to see in the NFL and in the college football landscape this year. Leave a like if you guys enjoyed, subscribe to the channel if you're new. And of course, if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football, which I'm sure you do, make sure to check out flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE when you sign up for 7 days for free, 30% off. And I will be putting out an article, or maybe I'll do this directly in the model. But as I kind of alluded to throughout this video, I talked about, oh, this guy stacks up well with this prospect from years past in the prospect model. I'm going to make a whole article about that, basically showcasing how does Ashton Jeanty stack up against Christian McCaffrey? How does Ollie Gordon stack up against Dalvin Cook, and some of the comps that we talked about in today's video. So if that interests you, definitely check it out down below in the description and in the pinned comment. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.